Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Friday Fuel Up. We have an athlete like you have never seen before on today's show. So get ready. This is going to be an incredible show and incredible conversation. Get ready to fuel up. So welcome again, everybody. My name is Dr. Mike Roussell, advisor for Men's Health Magazine and six-time author. Now, I'm a nutrition PhD by education, and for the last 10 plus years, I've been working with world-class individuals from professional athletes to top-tier business executives and even some Hollywood stars along the way. Now, helping them all figure out how to leverage the power of nutrition to be the best in their field, in the boardroom, and on the set. What I've personally learned is so much about success, dedication, commitment, and what drives these high-performing individuals. So I started Friday Fuel Up to share with you these incredible insights from some of the best in the world. Now today we have an incredible guest. Our guest today is Dallas Seavey, and let me read you a little bit about Dallas before I bring him on. So as I mentioned in the show intro, Dallas is an athlete like we've never seen before. He's a state and national wrestling champion, both at the high school and the collegiate level. And then after that, he went back to his roots as a third generation musher and dog racer. He was the youngest person to ever compete in the Iditarod, a 1,000-mile dog sled race through the Alaskan wild. And he did this at 18 years old. He was the youngest to win, winning his first Iditarod at the age of 25. And he's one of only 2 people to have won the Iditarod 5 times. And this year, he's coming and attempting to win his record-breaking 6th time. Now, as I was talking to him a little bit before this, maybe even more importantly, being a third-generation musher, he's actually beat his dad more times than he's lost to him. So I'm sure in the Seavey household, that is really the crown jewel of accomplishments. So he's joining us from his home in Alaska, off the grid. Let me bring him on, Dallas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, when I found out that we were going to have you on the show, it was so cool for me. Like, this is a random story. Like, as a kid, I had this Sports Illustrated VHS. So this is like the late 80s. And it was about champions and winning. And there was this sequence on the Iditarod. And it was the woman, her name escapes me right now, who has also won 5 times. And it was all about her and the Iditarod. And so I've been enthralled ever since. So to be able to chat with you about this is so exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, no, Susan Butcher is definitely an icon of this race. And, there's many people both involved as racers and probably more so involved as fans and enthusiasts that became aware of the sport and came in contact with the sport through Susan Butcher. And it was actually her bitter rival, Rick Swenson, that is the other 5-time champion. Susan Butcher reached the level of 4 and is most famous for really elevating the dog care level in the race. And that's kind of where her success stemmed from. I apologize, my cat is totally photobombing, but if I sit down, he's going to take the opportunity to get a little attention.
Wait. How can you have a cat? Because how many dogs do you have?
Well, that's just it. I have right at about 100 sled dogs. And this thing's starved for attention at the moment. But yeah, so with that many dogs, you've got a lot of feed around. There's always piles and piles of dog food, meat. And with that sort of stuff in the wilderness in Alaska, you have a lot of mice. So that's where this little guy comes in. So he's a valuable part of the kennel as well. That being said, he does not like going outside from about November through May. He's largely an inside cat. So I think he lets the mouse population build up to make it a little more sporting.
Yeah, I've never met a cat that liked 20 below weather, so that makes sense.
No.
So one of the things I wanted to get right into talking about was, I know with the Iditarod, there's a list of mandatory things that you have to carry with you. So emergency food for the dogs, an axe, snowshoes, actually some mail, because that was like the original kind of a throwback to the origins of the Iditarod. But having done this so long and having so much experience in this, what are your kind of personal mandatory items? So there's like the race says I have to have these, but then you, Dallas, always have what with you?
Sure. There's a couple items I'm always going to have in my sled. First and foremost, survival is travel. Winter's travel and survival are always crucial, whether or not you're on a race, right? Our game takes place in very remote places. So being prepared to care for yourself and, just as importantly, your team is really important. So I'm always going to have, and this is also mandatory equipment, an axe or a saw, some way to cut down trees. I have my fire starting kind of kit with me at all times, and not just in my sled, but on my person, for the possibility that I would become disconnected from my dog team and I don't have access to the things in my sled. I
Mhm.
also always have my big old knife on my hip. It's a tool that we use 100 times a day, but also in any sort of survival setting, it's pretty handy. And then obviously food for both me and the dogs. I always have at least a day's worth of food for the sled dogs in my sled, because presumably the sled is always going to stay with them. And then for myself, I'm going to have food, again, not just in the sled, but on my person, for whatever may happen. And there's a few things I like to bring, maybe some dried meats or something, but my main go-to is going to be pistachios. That's what it's always. I always have a bag of pistachios in my pocket, in my parka, and I've got the ones that I eat, of course, in the sled, but then I've got my like emergency pistachio rations on myself. So that's one of my one of my go-tos, which isn't something you necessarily think of in the cold, but you should, because it's an awesome food for cold weather. Not only is it the protein in there, has a lot of good fats. It has, so get this, one serving of pistachios, which happens to be 49 pistachios, and I can remember that easily because Alaska is the 49th state, and we're super proud of that fact. So
It's like the unofficial nut
one
of
serving,
Alaska then.
exactly. But it has as much protein as a whole egg. You've got as much potassium as a banana in that one dose of
So are
pistachios there. So that's kind of my go-to.
so you so there's no you don't have any problems, because I would imagine, I mean, you're out there, it's cold, with food freezing. So you have no
Yeah.
problems, because that's probably something else comes into it. You have no problem with eating. I can't say I've ever tried to eat a pistachio in freezing cold weather. So there's no issues with that.
Come on, try it. No, what I do have is I have pistachios that are pre-shelled,
Yeah.
because especially for snacking on the race, because I don't want to be taking my gloves off to shell them, and it's really hard to shell a pistachio with those giant mittens that we wear. I'm just gonna reach out of frame here, but here's the mitten that I wear on the Iditarod, so it's a little hard to open a pistachio with the sucker on. But
I don't know if that was a
other than
mitten
that,
or a leg from your snow pants.
yeah, it's big enough to be a sleeping bag for my cat as well.
Yeah, so actually, when we do the pistachio challenge later, I'm gonna have to ask that you put those on when you're competing against me for the shell for the shelling. So one thing I noticed that you were kind of, I have two questions about the things that you bring with you. One is, you seem to make a distinction that you always keep things on you and the sled, kind of because you never
Yeah,
know if you could get separated. And has that
yeah.
ever happened to you on the trail?
Not Not since I was probably about 15 or 16 years old, I think is the last time, and as the term would be in mushing, that I lost a team. Basically, where I was, tipped over, and in that case, I actually got jousted by a fallen tree that went in the collar of my coat,
Oh,
and it ran all the way
jeez.
down through my parka, through my pant leg, and it blew out the knee of my pant leg. So I felt like I had a good excuse to to let go on that one. That was an extreme case, and honestly, I was pretty thankful to be alive. Had that thing hit just a few, half an inch differently, it would have gone in my collarbone rather than down the collar of my shirt. But that being said, the let me go back just 1 second. The number one rule in mushing is you never let go of the team. You're gonna tip over, no matter how good you are, no matter how good you think you are. At some point, the trail is gonna be so hectic, so crazy, that you're gonna end up on your side with a dog sled. Now the key is that you hang on, even with those giant mittens. You got to hang on. The friction of your body and the sled on its side, and the dog saying, "What's wrong with you, boss?" That will slow down the team and then either stop them or allow you to right the sled and continue on. But before you continue on, it's very important that you look around. You make sure nobody saw you tip over, so that you can continue to maintain that I have never tipped over in my adult life, as I, of course, have not. Um,
Yes.
and make sure there's no photographic evidence of that. So
We'll
if you
delete
were
this.
to,
We'll delete this
oh,
portion from the recording.
okay, yeah, well, I'm saying I've never tipped over in my adult life, and you can't prove me wrong. So, um, That being said, no matter how good you are, it is possible that you get hit in the head with a stick. I've had encounters with moose out there. There are forces beyond ourselves that could cause you to end up becoming disconnected from that sled. And as much as we hope that that doesn't happen, you need to be prepared for that eventuality.
Yep. So why I think
Yeah.
that's like so interesting is because you know it's all there's so much push nowadays to like it's like you got to be tough, suck it up, like you're a machine and you kind of block out all this stuff. I think that like even kind of the idea of like a stoic or stoicism and stoic philosophy has been morphed into that, like you're this like feelingless being where it's not really that. And
Yep.
so what you're saying here is for you, you're like bring it all in because I'm strong enough to handle it and then deal with it. So why is that important to you
Yep.
in what you do is racing, and then how does that translate to kind of everyday people?
Sure. And let me begin by saying everything is balance. Everything needs to be in balance. That is always important. It is so easy to take anything to an extreme, and
Mm-hmm.
to target by too far is the same as by too short, right? The peak of the mountain is one spot. If you go too far, you're falling off the other side. It's the same as not having climbed up the near side. There's 1,000 different ways you can say it, but it's about balance, and that's where you have to be conscientious of that at all times. And I think that's something that gets a lot of people that are very driven. You focus on something and you drive, and you have to stop and look and say, have I passed the mark? Have I gone from being fitness making me a healthier person to that being my obsession? And now I spend 12 hours a day in the gym and obsess over this, and I'm still an obsessive person that's not a well-balanced being. Maybe you're neglecting your family or other duties, and you've become unhealthy in other ways. So it's always about balance. But where this is important, or where I guess I became aware of it, is I live in Alaska, right? The last frontier, all that big stuff. And
Yeah.
I think the mentality up here is that drive hard, push hard, kind of that little bit more of a macho attitude. And it's, ask any musher that just came in off the trail. It's 55 below zero out there. They've been out there for 24 hours since they even saw a heated building, much less went into one. And there was windstorm, overflow in the trail, water, just every hectic thing that could have happened. And you asked them, how was the run? What was it like? It was good. And that's it. That is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you like. Well, I didn't need to say anything else. And it is that macho thing. So where that becomes an issue, and having grown up in that, not just in Alaska, but in this sport, which is the toughest of the tough guys and gals from this state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it really is about putting your head down, putting the blinders on. And I became aware of it because when I was a wrestler, I could do that. The coach might be the worst dude in the world and just sitting here and brutal, brutal, brutal. He can't stop the clock. The time will pass. All I have
Yep.
to do is live 1 second at a time. And soon enough, that 8 hour day will be done, and I'll see you again tomorrow. I'll survive it one step at a time. And that's still a crucial element here. But as I got into mushing as a more of my main sport, what I saw was people putting those blinders on, and it's a stubbornness, and it's more about them, and they just resist information that would be more negative or more pressure or more stress. And for us, our job is to be cognizant and aware, because we're caregivers. That's our number one job, is to
Mm-hmm.
support a dog team. I have to recognize dogs are 10 times the athlete I am. And if I want to have success, yeah, I'm the one that they hand the trophy to. I'm the one that gets pat on the back. I'm the one that's the 5-time champion, but I didn't run the trail. Every single step was done by the sled dogs. Every bit of success comes from supporting them, and what they need is somebody who is aware of every little issue. So instead of putting my head in the clouds and saying, it's all good, I don't see any problems, I need to be aware of every possible problem. I need to bring it in. I need to process that. I need to understand it. And I need to be, I'm trying to think of the right way you have to have that flow going through you the whole time, bringing information in, dealing with it. And I think the key here is two things. Never Mother Nature doesn't care that you're out there, quite frankly. It doesn't care what your name is. It doesn't care if you won the Iditarod 20 times or this is your first time on the trail. It's not, the storm isn't here because of you. You are not the center of the universe, so don't take it personally. And I think it's in the same vein as that you can't have the victim mentality in there, where that's what will overwhelm you. So process it, accept it. Yep, that's what it is. Now it's your turn to take the choice of, what am I going to do about it? And that's a really empowering thought. It's not that this bad thing happened. Yes, that is simply there. And for me, fortunately, most of those things aren't from another human. It's more for the elements or the environment. And the thing to focus on is, so what am I going to do about it? It's my turn now. And kind of the inspiration there comes from, I know it's cliche, but I'm writing the next page in my book. Who do I want to be? Do I want to be the type of person that does what in this situation? And so I've really tried to focus on the ability to process that information and how to do that healthily so that I can absorb more and more and not have to put those blinders on. And then being self-aware enough to know when I'm in a place that I can handle the next 10 seconds worth of problems or the next 10 hours worth of problems, 10 days worth of problems, or 10 years worth of problems. And at times you need to be able to look, 10 years in advance and plan. And at other times that would overwhelm you. 10 days will overwhelm you. 1,000 miles of trail in front of us will overwhelm you. And that's when you focus down and say, I can absorb and process the next 10 seconds. So I'm going to do that really, really well. And you do 10 seconds in a row enough times, and it adds up to 1,000 miles of sled dog trail. And that's when you can look around and say, hey, looks like we had a good finish this year, guys.
So your sentiment is very similar to what we've seen with some other guests. Some of these other top performing guests. This idea of chunking it down, what's right in front of you, and then kind of going back to your quote about true strength. That if you're in that moment and you're thinking, well, what's currently in front of me, it's not as daunting to say, okay, bring in I want all the senses, like bring in everything that's happening. I'm not going to block this out, because you're just taking it one step at a time. You're not thinking, well, I got to save the entire world here, and bring it all in. So
yeah, if you're going to bring it in, you have to have a process to process it.
yes,
And I think one of the things that's helped me a lot there is ego is a heck of an enemy out there, man. And
oh
so often we want to have been right. So we all make plans. We especially as athletes, you go out there and you make these statements, whether verbally or through your actions, right? When I line up at the Iditarod, whether or not I say it, the implication is I'm here to win, right? We're going
yeah,
to try to do this well. This is my best effort. And so we constantly feel judged. And this is a huge thing in sports psychology. That kind of pressure that builds up, and even people's self-worth being wrapped up in the sport. And I've really tried to make a conscious effort to keep ego out of it. And I don't care if I was wrong, if it means I can be right now. So when I made a decision that I'm going to take on this big chunk of trail, I'm going to go do this big run, and I get halfway into it and say, that was a bad decision. This is more than what is healthy for my team right now. It's going to negatively affect our race 3 days from now. I've got to swallow my pride and be right now, be correct now, not try to defend the decision I made yesterday. And so often I see mushers on the race do things that I think they know is bad for their overall race, but they're defending a recent position. And so I'm
hmm
trying to update every 10 seconds. I want to make decisions with the best information. Don't throw good money after bad, and constantly make those course corrections. And that's kind of, in my own mind, I guess, my identity, which completely gets rid of the I have to justify this previous decision, or I have to be bullheaded and push through because that's what I said I was going to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying be wishy-washy and swim with the tide. You have to have some resilience here. But
yeah.
all of this is to the end of reaching our goal. What helps me reach that goal? And we have to think that we have better information now than we did yesterday.
So it's really interesting, like how you're describing that. I don't know if you're familiar with. There's a professional poker player named Annie Duke, and she wrote a book called Thinking in
I know of
Bets.
her.
So she wrote a book called
Okay.
Thinking in Bets that is like literally the thesis of it is what you're articulating. Like I think you would really enjoy it. But is that idea of
That's interesting.
it's not about ego, it's about making the right decision in the moment, and that decision, it might not lead to the outcome that you're shooting for, but you made the right decision, and that's really the only thing you can control. You made another comment before about how like Mother Nature doesn't care about, and the first time I ever took, here in Western New York, like the high peaks are like 4,000 feet. But the first time I took my oldest son and my nephew, they were like 8, and we are gonna go hike a 4,000 foot peak. And I was like, guys, we have one rule, and that is the mountain always wins. And so if we ever come to a spot, like we make a decision based on the fact that the mountain is going to win, and we can't do it because we want. We ended up having to turn back because this weather came flying in, and we were on this rock face. And so it was like a good lesson for them. But I think it rings true to what you're talking about. Like you really have to pull your ego out of these situations to make good decisions. And I think that, the way that you described your thinking, it's no surprise that you are this 5-time Iditarod champion, because it's that thought process. I think that is definitely a differentiator. Um, what I'd like to do next, because I appreciate we've kind of been going at this for a while, and I think you and I could talk for a long time, is move into our pistachio shelling challenge. And I know you
Oh
have some
dear.
pistachios here. Now I got mine.
I
I have
sure
mine.
do.
Yeah, you got yours. So you don't have to worry about showing yours. But after the first episode, some people were questioning my skills, like if they were legitimate, if I had like performance enhancing pistachio shelling abilities. So can show here. There's no cheating. I'm gonna put 30 seconds up on the screen, and so
Hold on.
shell as many
I'm going to prep my
pistachios.
pistachio shelling space.
Yes, yeah, clear your space. And then whoever shells the most pistachios, like if you shell more than me, which good luck, in 30 seconds, you will win a year supply of pistachios from our sponsors, the American Pistachio Growers. And if I win, I continue
All right.
to have all the pistachios with my name on the bags. So here we go, ready and go. And I'm also going to try to, I'm also going to try to distract you. So maybe you could tell us what we're doing. How much sleep do you get on the Iditarod?
I get about 2 hours a day, I suppose. On a good
Feel like
day
the
on the
Navy
race. Of
SEAL.
course, if something goes wrong, um, that 2 hours is the first thing that disappears from my schedule, and it becomes about caring for the dogs or fixing whatever the problem was. So that could easily go to 0 hours real quick. There was
Okay,
one
time's
year
up,
that
time's up,
outside of the
time's up, time's
mandatory.
up, time's up, time's up.
All right, I've got to count my stash here.
Oh man. All right. One,
Man,
2, 3, 4.
is 6 a good number? Joking.
Oh, I'm like, yeah, 6 is a great number.
All right, I'm gonna have to tally up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Probably not good enough for the
Oh my
professional
god,
sheller over here.
I got 13, 15. I think 15 is like the best ever.
Oh, I
I even
appreciate
told you.
your
Remember, I was like, you're
confidence
not going to
there.
need more than 15. You're like, don't underestimate me. All right, Dallas.
Well, you
Uh,
asked me the question, so I see your tactics here. I don't know if this is some dirty racing going on over here.
Look, I'm playing chess over here, okay, and I still can't win. But I just want to let you know. So I I've beat a rocket scientist, and so I've also Jeremy Jones, National Geographic Explorer of the Year. So by default, you have also surpassed them. I lost to an Olympic gold medalist, but he didn't get 15. So you are currently
Right.
the Friday Fuel Up world champion in
Reigning
pistachio
pistachio
shelling.
shelling champion.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen in March, but you should sleep well tonight, knowing that you are the pistachio
Yeah.
champion. Um,
I
so
think it's all the dexterity for working on dogs' feet, putting little creams and ointments in there.
oh
Very well oiled fingers because I'm always rubbing them into the dog's feet, and then
yeah,
by extension, I'm always getting this stuff on my hands. So
yeah,
it's the nice moist fingers
and your hands are probably room
that are
temperature, and they're
perfect.
used to functioning, at sub freezing temperatures. So
Exactly.
that's all right. So I got to go to Alaska
Shelling
to work on my
pistachios pretty well. It
yeah.
gets you good
Well,
skills.
it is the official nut of Alaska, so I've been told 49 nuts, 49th state.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So to I'm gonna wrap us up here. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and spending the time. We were able to talk a couple days ago, and I've been telling my wife ever since then. Like I can't wait to do this interview. I think the way that you look at things and how you approach the growth in your career has been really fascinating. So Dallas, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll see all you guys next time.